But I'm not gonna sit or stand on any pedestal and tell you about what I had in mind for you or your soul. Because the fact of the matter is, in the whole 40-year process, I was struggling for my own,
So you were struggling with your own
still.
challenges.
Yeah.
Struggling, you were in that tension between the ideal and the reality, right?
Absolutely.
Dozens of prestigious awards, millions of adoring hearts, a brilliant career spanning over 4 decades, Denzel Washington seemingly has it all. He is the very definition of success, of rising from hardship with an iron will. But is fame a panacea for all wounds? Can the glare of the spotlight truly dispel the shadows of an emotionally absent childhood, of unspoken losses? At 71, as everything settles, what still clings to his soul? We will explore his journey in search of peace, after a lifetime of relentless effort to prove his worth. Every destiny begins with a foundation, shaped in the very first moments of life. The foundation, a destiny shaped in silence. The story begins on December 28, 1954, in Mount Vernon, New York. It was a working-class town where faith and hardship lived on the same streets. To the outside world, the Washington family was a model of structure and religion. But inside the home, an emotional distance was growing, a silence that would shape everything to come. The house that silence built. Every day, Denzel's mother, Lennis, stood for hours in her beauty shop, carrying the weight of raising 3 children almost on her own. His father, the Reverend Denzel Hayes Washington Sr., was a figure of constant absence. He worked 3 jobs simultaneously: a Pentecostal minister, a city employee for Mount Vernon, and a retail worker at a department store. Denzel would later say he never saw his father rest. But because of that, he also never truly saw his father. The bond between them wasn't built on conversations or hugs. Love was implied through strict rules and scripture, but it was never spoken aloud, never shown through touch. In that house, a young Denzel learned a foundational lesson: how to carry everything alone. He learned not to demand attention or seek verbal comfort. He processed things internally because there were no words to describe the void left by a father who was present, but never truly there. That specific, daily absence quietly forged the armor of discipline he would wear for the rest of his life. He learned to observe, to listen, and to keep things inside. The silence in his home wasn't peaceful. It was an empty space, and Denzel filled it with self-control. That armor would serve him well, but it was about to face its first great test, just outside his front door. The rescue that felt like a betrayal. By the late 1960s, the streets of Mount Vernon were changing. Denzel, now a teenager, was falling in with a dangerous crowd, heading down a path that had a predictable, tragic end. His mother saw the warning signs. She realized her son was at a crossroads that could destroy his life, and she made a decision that, to a 14-year-old boy, felt like an act of cruelty. She sent him away to Oakland Military Academy, a boarding school with ironclad discipline. At that moment, Denzel felt betrayed, cast out of his own home. But years later, looking back, he understood the brutal truth behind his mother's choice. Of his 6 closest childhood friends, the other 5 didn't make it. They ended up in prison or dead from street violence. In an interview, his voice cracked as he said, "By the grace of God, that could have been me." The first nights at military school were cold and lonely. The feeling of abandonment was overwhelming. But slowly, the chaos of the streets was replaced by rigid structure. Dawn formations, crisp uniforms, and unbreakable rules. His dangerous freedom was taken away and replaced with a framework for survival. His mother didn't save him with gentle love or comforting words. She saved his life with the most painful action she could take, a sacrifice for them both. "I believe she saved my life," Denzel would later admit. The academy reinforced his armor of discipline. It gave him a foundation, but it didn't give him a purpose. That search was about to begin, under even more difficult circumstances. Hunger before the spotlight. In 1972, Denzel Washington enrolled at Fordham University. These were not years of academic enlightenment or student parties. They were years of deprivation. He was so poor that some nights he went to bed hungry. He worked odd jobs to get by: a sanitation worker, a post office clerk, with no clear direction for his future. He was simply trying to survive. The change came during the summer of 1975 at a YMCA camp where he was working as a counselor. During an impromptu staff talent show, Denzel got on stage. He didn't know what he was doing, he just performed. After the show, a colleague came up to him and said something that changed everything. "Have you ever thought about acting? You were born to do it." Those words were a flash of lightning. For the first time, Denzel saw a possible path, a place where he might belong. When he returned to Fordham that fall, he changed his major to drama. It was a leap of faith into total uncertainty, made at a time when he had nothing. But for the first time in his life, his effort and his purpose aligned. The focus he had honed in his silent childhood and in the discipline of military school now had a target. He threw himself into his studies with a new, powerful drive. He graduated in 1977 with a degree in drama and journalism. He had a clear idea of what he wanted to do, but that clarity didn't pay the bills. He was still just a guy trying not to drown. The spotlight was still far away, and the path to it was shrouded in the darkness of the invisible years to come. The invisible years. After graduation, Denzel won a prestigious scholarship to the American Conservatory Theater in San Francisco. But after only a year, he decided to leave. He felt it was time to face the real world. He returned to New York with a suitcase and his father's old Bible. The years that followed were a long, grinding sequence of rejection and hardship. He went from one audition to the next, but the door always seemed to close in his face. He was homeless, sleeping on friends' couches. The poverty of his college years clung to him. This was more than just physical hunger. It was a hunger for purpose and recognition. He had found his calling, but the world didn't seem to be listening. In his darkest moments, one thing kept him going: his faith. That faith was anchored by a specific memory from 1975, just before he committed to acting. He was in his mother's beauty shop when an elderly woman, a stranger, stared at him and delivered a prophecy. "Young man, you are going to travel the world and speak to millions of people." Denzel was stunned. He took out a piece of paper and wrote down the date and her exact words. He kept that note in his wallet for years. It became a spiritual anchor, a reminder that there was a bigger plan for him, even when his reality was nothing but rejection. He wasn't chasing fame. He was chasing a truth he believed was meant for him. That persistence and faith became his only source of sustenance. And it was that persistence that would finally lead him to a critical choice, one that would define his entire career. The choice that slowed everything down. By the early 1980s, Denzel's career was gaining traction. His role on the television series Saint Elsewhere brought him national recognition. The offers started to come in. He was no longer the unknown actor sleeping on a couch. In 1986, a major offer arrived. It was a big role in a high-profile film, the kind of part that could launch him to a new level of stardom. But there was a problem. The role perpetuated a negative stereotype, an image he felt would compromise his own dignity and that of the community he represented. Denzel faced a difficult choice: take the fast track to fame or hold on to his principles. He sought advice from the one man who had walked that path before him, Sidney Poitier, the legendary actor who had broken down barriers for black performers in Hollywood. That conversation solidified Denzel's resolve. He turned the role down flat, knowing it could set his career back for years. He understood that the first choices you make when you have a little bit of power are the ones that tell the world who you are. The immediate price was fewer job offers. Hollywood has a short memory and doesn't always reward those who say no. But Denzel had held on to something more important: his soul. He had chosen integrity over speed. It was a quiet, career-defining moment. It set a standard for every role he would take from that point forward. He would not compromise his core values, no matter the cost. The choice may have slowed his ascent, but it ensured that when he finally reached the top, he would stand there on a foundation that could not be shaken. And the top was now closer than ever. The throne and its hidden tax. Denzel's patience and integrity paid off. The late 80s and early 90s saw his career explode. His performance in Glory, 1989, earned him his first Academy Award. That was followed by Malcolm X, 1992, a monumental performance that cemented his status as one of the greatest actors of his generation. He was at the summit. But every throne comes with a hidden tax. His work schedule became brutal. 16-hour days on set were followed by hours of preparation for the next. The immense fame brought with it an unrelenting pressure to be perfect, to make no mistakes. He had become the unbreakable man, and he had to live up to that image every single day. That pressure seeped into his personal life. The woman who stood by him through it all was Pauletta Pearson. They met in 1977 on the set of a TV movie. When Denzel proposed, she said no. He proposed a second time, and again, she refused. She was afraid of the Hollywood lifestyle, its temptations and instability. It wasn't until his third proposal that she finally agreed. They married in 1983 in a simple, modest ceremony. During his struggling years, Pauletta was the family's anchor. And as he became a superstar, she continued to be the one who held everything together while he was constantly away. Success brought a subtle isolation. He was always surrounded by people, but rarely had time for deep connection. The pressure to always be Denzel Washington left little room to just be himself. In the middle of filming Malcolm X, one of the most demanding roles of his career, his father passed away. Denzel did not attend the funeral. Years later, he confessed that he didn't cry. Not because he was heartless, but because, as he put it, there wasn't a deep enough relationship to mourn. The emotional distance of his childhood had left a permanent mark. That void was never filled. Perhaps that moment made him realize what was most important. In 1995, Denzel and Pauletta renewed their wedding vows in South Africa, with Archbishop Desmond Tutu officiating. It was more than a ceremony. It was a public commitment that he would not repeat his father's mistake, that he would not let emotional distance destroy the family he had built. He was trying to control his own legacy, but he was about to learn that some things in life not even Denzel Washington can control. The losses that refuse to stay silent. Success and wealth can create an illusion of safety. But life has a way of shattering that illusion. For Denzel, the reminders of life's fragility came in the form of devastating losses. In 2012, the world was shocked by the death of Whitney Houston, a friend of the Washington family. Her sudden passing was a profound blow, a sign that talent and fame were no shield against a person's inner demons. But the loss that hit hardest came in 2020, with the death of actor Chadwick Boseman from cancer. The news was more than a Hollywood tragedy. For Denzel, it was deeply personal. Years earlier, when Chadwick was a talented but broke acting student at Howard University, he was accepted into a prestigious summer program at Oxford. He couldn't afford the tuition. One of his professors reached out to friends in the industry, and Denzel Washington quietly paid the bill for Chadwick and several other students, asking for no recognition. After Chadwick became a global star as Black Panther, he publicly shared the story. But there was a detail Denzel only learned after Chadwick had died. For 12 years, from the moment he received the help to the day he passed away, Chadwick never mentioned it to Denzel personally. He held his respect in silence. When asked about it, Denzel's words carried immense weight. "He didn't owe me a thing. He paid for it with his life." Chadwick's death was a wake-up call. Denzel realized that even the strongest people can be fighting battles no one knows about. He was filled with the regret of "I never asked." He had been with Chadwick, talked to him, but had no idea about the illness he was hiding. Each of these losses was a blow to his armor. They forced him to confront the fact that talent, fame, money, and discipline could not protect anyone from pain and death. These events pushed him closer to presence and kindness. preparing him for one last battle his time, with his own body and his own hidden struggles. When the armor finally cracked, for decades, Denzel Washington commanded his body and career with an iron will. He pushed his physical limits for roles, reshaping his body, changing his voice, and immersing himself completely. Willpower was his greatest tool, but then his body began to talk back. In 2013, he underwent heart surgery. It was a stark reminder that even the strongest fortress has vulnerabilities. His body was demanding the attention and rest he had long denied it. The biggest crack in the armor, however, came from a public and unexpected confession. In early 2024, at the age of 70, Denzel shared that he had given up alcohol completely after decades of a silent struggle. He called it the longest fight of my life, longer than any role. This admission completely reframed the public's perception of him. The man of steel-like discipline, the icon of self-control, had also been fighting a deeply human battle. For the first time, he was facing something he couldn't control with sheer willpower alone. He couldn't act his way out of it. He had to surrender, admit his own powerlessness, and seek a higher strength. This marked a profound shift in his philosophy. He moved from a life of endurance to one of restraint. He was no longer trying to conquer the world with his own strength. Instead, he was learning to let go. He began to pray more and work less. He started to see old age not as an enemy, but as a teacher. And finally, after 7 decades, he began to learn how to take off the armor he had worn for so long, the armor forged in the silent home of his childhood. He was learning how to live without it. The echo of peace. Denzel Washington's journey has come full circle. It began in a home where silence was a burden and love was unspoken. That silence created an armor of discipline that helped him survive the streets, endure the invisible years, and conquer Hollywood. But that same armor also isolated him. Success brought pressure, and loss showed him the limits of his own strength. Finally, in confronting his own vulnerability, he found strength not in control, but in surrender. At 71, Denzel Washington is no longer trying to prove anything to the world. He has the awards. He has the legacy. What remains is an inward journey, a search for peace. One quote seems to capture his entire life. Success is not measured by the heights you reach, but by who you refused to become on the way. He refused to become a man who compromised his dignity. He refused to repeat the emotional distance of his father. And now, he refuses to let his past define his future. What is left is an inner peace, perhaps the rarest and most valuable commodity in all of Hollywood. The man who spent his life playing other characters has finally found comfort in simply being himself.